right, hello. Welcome. Welcome to the show. This is Conversations About Mental Health. I have a very good friend on the show today. His name is Dan. I've known him for about 26 years. I'd like to introduce you to him right now. Here's Dan Ingersoll, everyone.
Hey, how are you? I'm Dan Ingersoll.
Yeah.
I've known him since he was 14.
Mm-hmm.
So
what was that, 94, 95, something like that?
God.
Long time ago. It was a
long.
very long time ago. So here we are to talk about mental illness and mental health issues. So I have some questions for you.
Okay.
So Dan, where are you from? First question.
I'm born in Peekskill.
Born in Peekskill, okay. When were you first diagnosed with mental illness?
Kindergarten, actually.
In kindergarten?
Kindergarten.
How old were you then?
Probably about 5. It was difficult for me to understand the other kids because of my upbringing was so violent. I couldn't relate to the kids. My learning disability made it difficult to do things and understand the homework, even at kindergarten age. And immediately, they had me see a therapist. So my first psychological profile was in 1982, and I was diagnosed with ADHD, acute anxiety.
At such an early age?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a violent upbringing, you know. Plus, I already had like a mental illness to begin with, and then you add the violence, you know. So I've been seeing therapists forever.
Since you were very young, since you were about 5?
Yeah, and this affects your self-esteem and all this other stuff.
Okay. What medications are you taking?
I'm taking Celexa and I'm taking Thorazine. I don't really want to take a lot of meds, so getting myself down to 2 meds makes me feel like somewhat normal.
Okay. Oh, that's good. That's good. What do you take the Thorazine for? Because that's a heavy medication.
Yeah, well, I'm using it for anxiety because they don't want to give me anything heavy, and I don't want to take anything heavy, you know, like Klonopin or anything like that.
Yeah.
I don't want to say that the Thorazine doesn't do anything, but it's at least something.
Right.
And it's not heavy.
Okay. How long have you been taking medications?
Oh, right away.
Since you were young?
Yeah. When I was diagnosed with ADHD, they put me on Ritalin.
Okay.
And I was on Ritalin for most of my life.
Did it help?
Tremendously. It helped tremendously. My teachers were always able to tell whether I took it or not based on how I was acting in the classroom.
Okay. Good. Over the years, how has your condition improved?
Well, it started really improving when I decided to take therapy serious. And I started going to a place called Cove Care in Putnam Valley. And I was with a therapist for about 3 years. And he helped me get over some of my anxiety because at that point it was really, really bad. Body sensations, chest pains, a lot of physical problems from the anxiety. Just really quickly, when I would see that therapist, it would be painful to be in the waiting room. I would have to figure out how to use props. Like I would grab a magazine, look for something that had a lot of words on it, and pretend I'm reading it. The anxiety prevented me from reading it. The anxiety gave me tunnel vision, and I was filled with fear because my danger gauge is turned way up because of all the things that have happened, plus eye surgeries, which we'll touch on. But after 3 years of going to that therapist, I got more comfortable in that waiting room, more comfortable with groups, and I decided 3 years ago to start going to Cove Care for the group therapy. When I first got there, I wasn't saying anything. I wasn't going to read out loud because it was too terrifying, but I went there with my notebook. I ate the meat and spit out the bones, whatever applied to me, and I was very driven. And you know, so for me to be able to do this from where I wasn't able to function in a waiting room. Like, this is me pushing myself to be, I'm trying to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is very uncomfortable. But like, when I'm done with this, and I go online and I watch myself, I'm gonna be like, I really have come a long way.
You're gonna feel a lot better.
Yeah.
It's like being at the dentist's office. Almost.
Like being at the dentist's office. I'm nervous, but I'm pushing through
You're doing
it.
very well. I have to thank you for coming on, especially because it took a little bit of work.
Yeah, well, I panicked last week, and I called you up, and I'm like, I'm afraid, but I'm doing it. I'm pushing through it.
I mean, I know where you live. You know, I can find you easily. Your door is not that hard to break down, you know, with a simple axe. No, but it's okay. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that you're doing well, and that you're breathing, right?
Oh,
right?
yes, I forgot to breathe.
You got to breathe. You got to breathe. And drink lots of water. Okay, good. So we did a little bit of a pre-interview that maybe some of the people didn't get to see, but you mentioned something about a vending machine.
Oh, yes. When I was seeing my therapist for that 3-year stretch, they were trying to figure out what meds to put me on. And I don't know anything about meds or anything like that. And I was asking him, what do I say? How, you know, give me the details, because information helps my anxiety, because I can use the logical side of my brain instead of the emotional side. And he's like, try to think about your psychologist as a vending machine. Basically, I have to see the therapist first, and then I see the psychologist, and it's almost like an interview where I let him, like, he's already talked to the therapist, but he just wants to hear my side of it.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to be, like, manipulative, I could lie about my symptoms, and I could probably get whatever I want, because their philosophy is, are you doing better? Good, take more.
And they only have, what, 10 minutes, 15 minutes to talk to you, right? It's a very short amount of time.
Yeah. But I mean, my mindset has always been get better, you know, and this started from before kindergarten, you know, with the insecurities and everything else and the anxiety that is just awful. So I wanted to get the right meds. I wanted to be honest with him. I mean, it's hard to hide the fact that you're doing something with your hands. It's hard to hide the fact that you're nervous and you're not breathing properly. So when I'm talking to one of these people, it's like, okay, he clearly has anxiety, and he's being honest with me, and I'm going to help him with whatever meds he might need, you know, and it's mostly my choice not to go on the heavy meds, which is a lot more difficult, because if I had a heavy med right now, what I'm feeling would be lessened, but I wouldn't grow as much. So
Interesting.
Yeah, so I try to remind myself that, you know, bad feelings always pass. Everything passes. You know, the pain in my chest that I have, like, right now.
Yeah.
Trying to communicate, it will pass. A lot of positive self-talk is something I've learned in these programs. Things that seem simple, things that everybody should really know, but nobody really takes time to better their brain. They're just stuck in, go to work, do this thing, do that thing. So in a sense, I look at it as a blessed affliction, because I'm forced to learn about myself. I'm forced to manage symptoms. I'm forced to, you know, and it's not comfortable. And, you know, sometimes I have the symptoms flare up, and I have night terrors, and I can't get out of bed. But it's, you know, I get up. I push myself.
Okay. Does it prevent you from working?
Unfortunately, it does. I've had several jobs, and I've lost really good jobs. And part of it is the attention deficit disorder, the anxiety. And the other part is the PTSD. The anxiety, what happens is I can't get the anxiety to get out of me. So I'll be at a job, and daily, every single day, the anxiety builds up and builds up and builds up, and it never purges. It never.
So much to the point that you can't even do the job.
Yeah. I worked at a bowling alley, and I would find myself in the bathroom sitting on the stall. I'm like, I just got to get through the day. The day is almost over. I would gather myself, and I would go through the day, and And you know, just keep pushing myself until everything feels like it collapses in on me with all my fears. And
it just becomes too much for you.
it's too much, and either I don't show up or I just can't do it.
Yeah. So you're very fragile in a sense, kind of.
Oh, I'm super fragile. I need I need gentleness. I need understanding. You know, and I've spent most of my life trying to be able to communicate. Because
what your needs are.
What my needs are, because being in a abusive and violent, verbally and violent and physically violent upbringing, I was never able to express without violence being thrown at me. So I was never able to articulate things. Plus I had a speech impediment and a learning disability. So that affected my self-esteem. And then So just basically communicating is something I've always tried to do. Learn big words so I don't have to say a whole sentence, so just a big word can explain it. And it wasn't until I picked up the guitar that I realized I have a voice. I don't have to verbalize it. I'll never forget my dad telling me one day that he can tell what I'm feeling by what I'm playing. This was in high school, and like a light bulb went off my head, and I'm like, oh my God, I can kind of hide behind the guitar, you know, and finally vent my feelings out through the notes and the sounds.
Which were so difficult to express.
Exactly. Which why 3 years ago, I wasn't able to talk in those groups. Now I can. I actually got an award for participation and community service and stuff, which was very nice.
Great.
But the learning disability affects the guitar too. Not the learning disability, but the symptoms affect the guitar playing.
The symptoms, when you say the symptoms, can you explain what symptoms?
A lot of fear. You know, it's not fun to be scared all the time. A lot of it is fear-based, and then the post-traumatic stress makes things seem scarier than it is.
Do you revisit some of these times that you're afraid that the action's going to be repeated? That you may relive it?
Yeah, that's PTSD. That's me listening to footsteps and panicking, because when I heard footsteps, it always meant violence was about to happen.
Yes.
So when my symptoms, my PTSD symptoms kick in, and let's say I wake up from a night terror and I wake up having a panic attack, everything I hear around me sounds like scary explosions, footsteps, doors closing, anything that triggers me, and the memory comes right back into my head, and I feel the same way I did back then.
Like you're right back there.
Exactly.
It's terrible. What about the PTSD? What were the lowest points for you? Because we can get to talk about this eye surgery, this horrifying event that happened for you.
Well, the eye surgery changed my life dramatically. When
was this?
I was 12 years old, mid to late 80s. So in between the age of 12 and 13, I had 4 major eye surgeries. I had a detached retina, and I had to go to do the surgery, so I went and I did the surgery. I recall myself being pretty brave at the first surgery. I was just like a 12-year-old. I'm like, I can take care of this, knowing that it's going to suck at the end. I'll deal with it when I'm in recovery.
You didn't know how horrifying it was going to be.
No, because apparently I'm allergic to anesthesia. So after the first surgery, I was in recovery for about 5 hours, puking, and just my body was going through just
rejecting
all the anesthesia. And I mean, you've had situations where you've puked before, and you know the pressure behind your eyes that you normally would have. I mean, I just had eye surgery, and I'm puking constantly, and the pressure behind my eyes was just, it's indescribable. The pain. There's no words that are adequate to explain it, because they had to amputate the lens that was in there, and then they had stitches around the sclera, which is the white part, holding.
So they actually had to do stitches inside of your eye?
On the outside, well, they had to do stitches on the outside of the eye, the whole white part.
And for this, they definitely needed to give you anesthesia.
Well, yeah, until they realized that I'm allergic to anesthesia.
And then they did it without anesthesia.
Without anesthesia. The second surgery was right after the first surgery. So it was fresh and cut and bleeding and whatever else. And yeah, so they had to use Novocaine instead of anesthesia for the second surgery. So I was awake.
You were awake for that
surgery? I was awake. I was a 12-year-old boy who always had a fear of going blind. I grew up where I needed a nightlight. My biggest fear was going blind, and all of a sudden, oh my God, my retina tore. And then I'm allergic to anesthesia. And then they have to put Novocaine into my optic nerve. They slid it into my eyelid, into the optic nerve, twice here, pumped it with Novocaine, and then on the top of it, like under the bone, and slid it over the eye into the optic nerve. So it was a total of 4 shots. And then, they put your face in the machine, and then they were using lasers to kind of like weld the inside retina to the silicone that they implanted. And then I went through another couple of months of recovery, which for a hyperactive kid was horrible because I had to lay on my face in bed like for a couple months. And my mom would have to administer the eye drops. And the eye drops hurt like crazy, you could imagine. And then something really horrible happened in between second and third surgery. I was on a trip with a bunch of kids, and we were hiking. And apparently the surgery didn't take. So what was happening is every step that I was taking, the eye was ripping. I ended up with multiple detachments, small multiple detachments. So every step I was taking, I would see blackness move more and more over to the left until there was nothing there. It was completely blind. And I had to go to New York City to get surgery from a specialist. By that time, they tried a different type of anesthesia, different type of surgery, even a different type of gas. They put in the first surgery, I said I had to sleep on my face or lay on my face for 2 months. That's because they put a gas that was light, so it would push against the retina while I'm laying down and keep the retina in place so it could heal. The third surgery, they put a heavy gas in my eye so I could lay on my back. So that was a nice treat. So I could lay on my back and the heavy gas would, go onto the retina, hold it into place so that it would take. So with all the trauma of the third surgery, the surgery took. But it took a little too well, and I ended up with a lot of scar tissue on my retina. So I had to have a fourth surgery for them to go in there and scrape out the scar tissue from my retina.
Jesus.
And so by that time I was 13 years old. I was having tremendous night terrors, which is different from a nightmare. We've all had nightmares, but night terrors are very submersive. I would wake up from a night terror with my hair damp, my shirt damp.
You're sweating.
I'm sweating because my brain is putting me, I feel like I'm on an alternate world where I'm literally there. These things that I'm seeing make sense. They're all happening. I remember one dream which was about the surgery in particular, and I woke up crying, and it was so real. It took me a few minutes to kind of snap out of it. And for years after the surgery, I would have night terrors. I still have nightmares sometimes. And then when that happens, and that affects my morning, and it's obviously uncomfortable, and I have to push myself to just get in the cab, go to my programs, keep trying to get better, learn more about my symptoms, try to manage them, but it takes years.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like a very long journey you've been on. We don't have too much time. We only have maybe 7 minutes left. I want to ask you what helped. What has helped the symptoms of PTSD and some of the horrors that you've faced?
Well, the coping skills that I learned at Cove Care, great curriculum, very thorough curriculum at Cove Care. I've learned a lot of coping skills, a lot of breathing techniques. I've learned to give myself a minute to think clear. There's a breathing technique that I enjoy doing called diaphragmatic breathing, which means you're visualizing your diaphragm pulling the lungs, which draws the air in. And by visualizing it, I'm distracting myself from everything that's going on. I'm seeing it in my head. It's pulling the air in, and by the air coming into my lungs, it's oxygenating the blood and then therefore oxygenating my brain. And when my brain is oxygenated better, I can think a little bit clearer. So if my anxiety is at a 9, I can usually get it down to a 7, or if it's at a 10, and 10 being you just can't function. So maybe I can get it down to a 7 and then get in that cab. I'm exhausted when I get in that cab. I try to shake off the excess energy and just try to keep pushing, you know. It's exhausting. Anxiety is exhausting. PTSD is exhausting. Trying to concentrate, you know, because during a conversation with the ADD, the attention is going back and forth. So I'm only picking up like half of what's being said to me. And it takes a lot of energy to keep the focus so that I can hear it, respond, and then again, I'm exhausted. You know, but I've learned to generate extra energy to create more focus. But it's an ongoing, lifelong thing. You know, when I first started this, I thought that I would get to a plateau. I'd get to a point where I'm normal.
Yes.
And then I realized I'm never going to be normal. I'm just Dan, but I can learn to manage my issues, my symptoms, and continue to grow. So now I look at it like a lifelong journey of getting better and doing something like this. Thank you for your encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, like I said, I chickened out the first time, and I didn't do this, but I'm doing it now, and so. Good.
Are you ready to play some guitar for us?
Yeah, I'll play some guitar.
You gonna shred?
I'll try. I'll try to shred. I'm real nervous, really shaky, but
Okay, I think you'll do great. I think you're gonna do great. So, let's
oh, my leg fell asleep.
hear for Dan Ingersoll. He's gonna play some guitar for us. Here you go. Enjoy.
Oh no. It's always horrible when that happens. I got it. Now I just need my guitar pick.
Great, man. Nice Iron Maiden ending there.
Gotta have Iron Maiden.
That's good, man. Very good, Dan. So, good. What would you like to tell the audience in closing? I think we only have a couple of minutes.
Oh, just, walk gently in the lives of others, because you don't know what they're going through or what they've been through, so just walk gently in the lives of others.
Walk gently in the lives of others, because you never know what they've been through, right?
You never know.
Nobody knows the horrors that this guy has faced or someone else that you've met has faced.
Yeah. Well, you know the details.
The details, but sure, to walk in the same footsteps as them is, never an easy thing. So we have about 2 minutes left.
I didn't play long enough?
Well, you had so many notes in a short period of time. So, people can slow it down and maybe, take a look at what you're doing. But, that was about it. That was about it. That is the show. We can end it there unless you want to play something else.